welcome back to Sync Riffs. Happy May. It's AAPI month, and in honor of AAPI month, I have a very special guest in the studio. Want to welcome from Rogue Planet music director Lana Bowie. Hey, Lana. Good morning. How's it going?
Good morning. It's great. How are you?
Doing great. We were catching up before the session, and just want to, thank you for taking the time out, and would love to thread the needle for our listeners in navigating the entertainment space and spend some time. Tell us about how you made your way into being a music supervisor. And I know you were the first music director at Rogue Planet in 2022. But before that, what was your journey like into the industry? And what was your kind of first break into music supervision?
So like most Asians, I started playing violin really young. And I was involved very heavily in high school orchestra and college orchestra, and my favorite thing to play would always be film scores. Oh, sorry. So I always had a love for film and music and how, it came together with orchestral music and the emotions that would come out when you're playing those sorts of scores. And I wanted to work for like Warner Brothers or Disney or something like that, working with film score. But I also loved the aspect of marrying commercial music with visual as well. Like I grew up watching shows like The OC or One Tree Hill, and I just really loved the way that those scenes would um, have, music that would create this emotional response in the audience. So I learned very early on that music supervision was a job. And I just really, pedal to the metal. Everything I did was in support of becoming a music supervisor. So in college, I graduated with a music business degree. I moved to LA. I got an internship after internship, kind of figuring out, how to break in. And one of my first internships was actually at Cobalt Music Publishing. I was their first ever intern back in 2012.
Wow.
And from there, I had a really, really, really great experience working for them. But also, I was very lucky because Chris Lakey, who's now the SVP at Cobalt, knew I wanted to be a music supervisor, and he was kind enough to put me in touch with different music supervisors in different medias so that I could see the differences and kind of informational interview with them and see the differences between the different medias and kind of find out what route I wanted to go in. So I met with an ad, a trailer, an in show, an in film supervisor, a freelance supervisor. And eventually, I got the call that, hey, I need an assistant and would you be able to join us? And one thing after another, I started from the bottom as an assistant, and now I'm director of music at Rogue.
Yeah, and shout out to Chris because what he does at Cobalt, and like you said, sometimes those opportunities, being in the AIP community, sometimes we don't have mentors. We kind of have to find our own path. And
Yes.
It sounds like like you said, doing the work and really being a student of, because there are so many facets. So tell us about at Rogue Planet as music director. I know you guys work on some amazing campaigns, everything from The Gray Man, Transformers. Tell us more about, and when you came on, you were able, with your work and work with the team, securing some Clio awards for Rogue Planet.
Yeah.
So tell us more about, what's the day-to-day at Rogue Planet and peeling back the layers.
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate. I get to work for a really awesome company that works on, a range of projects in different genres and different studios. So mainly our clients at Rogue are like Netflix, Apple, Warner Brothers, Paramount. So we get to work on a lot of those projects that come through those studios. And then we also sometimes get things from, ABC or Lifetime, other network projects as well. So you have to have a lot of knowledge of various genres. And then you also have to have like this kind of innovative quality to the way that you think about music. How can we take something that's existing and turn it into something that is modernized and unique, but still familiar to the audience? So I think, from a day-to-day basis, I get up in the morning, I go box, got to get some workout in, and then I come back and have my coffee and kind of get settled for the day. Like, what do I have? What's on the docket for today?
Hmm.
And then that sort of kind of prepares my brain for like jumping from genre to genre to genre.
Hmm.
And the thing about trailers is you're going to be on many campaigns at once in different stages. So you might be on a TV campaign for this film, but like you might be on a trailer, a teaser for another film.
Mm.
So you're kind of having to jump very quickly from genre to genre. So it just kind of helps me to have like my morning coffee, sit for a
Hmm.
little bit and kind of prepare.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of conversations with our editors that we have on staff. It's conversations with composers in order to get music to where we need it to be. I might send a couple searches for music if I have a need that I'm struggling to find.
Hmm.
But I do spend a lot of time listening to music and sort of trying to find an innovative way in to that recognizability, or how do we take an unknown song and make it so that people, I call it ear catching, like make it so that people will want to Shazam it or find out what it is.
Yeah.
So it's very, very highly creative on a day-to-day basis. And then
Mm.
of course there's a percentage of where I've got to do like cue sheets and licensing requests and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So
Hmm.
um my day is just consistently filled with music from top to bottom.
Yes, 100%. And, to spend some time there and to drill down, because in-house composers, do you tend to work with, you have a team that's in-house, or do you farm it out, or it just kind of depends on the project?
We do not have in-house, and I have, despite playing violin for like 20 years, I have no other musical ability. So composition is not something that I do. So I definitely farm it out.
Okay.
There are music library companies that specialize in trailers.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
the modernized world is like trailerization or interpolation, customization.
Mhm.
So I will reach out to composers, that I've created relationships with over the past 15 years of my career.
Mhm.
And basically, I'll reach out if I feel like it's a strong suit of theirs. So if I'm
Yeah.
working on something action, I have my action composers. If I'm working on something emotional, I'll go
Mm.
to somebody who has really nice string samples or like can work with a
Mm.
live string, um,
Mhm.
you know, group or something like that. So I definitely have composers that I work with that help me
Mhm.
make Rogue's vision come to life.
Yes. So some great points there, Lana. And, to unpack it further, because I'm always curious, because, I'm a sync agent. So
Yeah,
I'm pitching existing tracks from indie artists or labels or publishers,
right.
TV, film. But with trailerization, I'm curious, where does sort of the genesis of the idea for trailerizing a song, can that come from you, or can it come from the client, or a combination?
It's definitely a combination. Every project is headed by a client that likes to work in a different way.
Mhm.
And Rogue is primarily known for, dark thriller, action, blockbuster campaigns. So we do work on like, as you mentioned earlier, Transformers, The Gray Man. These are obviously action-packed, very sound design driven pieces.
Mhm.
So to go back to your question, um, sometimes we'll get direction from a client saying, "Hey, you know what? This film." I'll take Transformers for example.
Sure.
Transformers was based in 1994. That was the year that the film was, the setting of the film.
Mhm.
So it was very important to the client that the songs we used for marketing were also from 1994, that specific year.
Yeah.
So it might be as specific as that, or we have other clients who are like, you know what, do the thing that you guys do best. Like,
Yeah.
show me something unique. In
Mm.
which case, I'll work with my team. I'll work with the owner of the company and creative director, Ben, to come up with a concept. And, we'll talk about it in how can we use a composer to either enhance or arrange certain things so that we could bring out certain parts of the scenes that we're seeing.
Mm.
So it is definitely a mix of having direction, conceptualizing ideas on
Mm.
your own,
Mm.
and then it's also there's a part of it that's like fighting for it. So
Yeah.
even though you might have like a great idea and you
Right.
might have the perfect customization for it, you also have to go to bat for it too. So there is that element of fighting for what you think will work.
Some interesting points there to unpack further, because correct, obviously the goal of a trailer, the studio, it's to entice people to want to see the full
Yes.
theatrical film.
Yeah,
So yeah, and on that note, I'm curious about the trend of covers and trailers. Is it still something that studios look to, or if not, what's kind of some current trends we're seeing in the trailer space?
for sure. I don't think covers are ever going to leave. It's going to be a trend that's going to stay there, and the reason why is because covers offer a modern take on something that's extremely familiar or recognizable. And
Mhm.
I always say this about trailers. I'm in the business of marketing. I'm
Mm,
not necessarily a music supervisor who's finding the perfect music for a specific scene. I
mm,
am in the business of, making something look so exciting that you're going to want to drive to the theater, buy a ticket, and, sit in a theater seat.
yeah.
um and then also with streaming, or you want to sit at home and stream that movie. So I'm in the business of advertising a film.
Mm,
So when you're marketing something, there are audiences in which you want to market to. Is this film made for kids? Is it made for adults? Is it made for women, men, children? Is it for the queer community, for the AAPI community?
mhm.
Who are you marketing to? And so going back to covers, covers offers the familiarity of something to the older crowd, like say Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, but done in a new way, like a female creepy cover or something like that, where it's going to entice younger people and older people to want to see it. But
Mhm.
then also, it allows somebody who has never or who doesn't know anything about that particular film to sort of equate or draw some sort of relation to it using that
Yes.
music. So
Yeah.
covers is something that's never going to go away. We
Mhm.
rely on it a lot in marketing, but there are other trends. Other trends that come up. They come up and go, just like trends do.
Mhm.
I'll give you an example.
Sure.
When This Is Us came out, the
Mhm.
trailer for it was perfection. I shout out to John Cantu. He was the editor on it, and I believe he created the song concept as well. But you know, uh, he took a '90s hip hop song and started it off really, deconstructing it. So basically, just going really, really slow
Mhm.
and sort of teasing that introduction with strings. And
Mm.
then he breaks into the actual song itself. And that was just really innovative at the time. And so
Yeah.
that sort of thriller string then became a trend. I think it lasted for, a year or two, and then we moved on to the next thing. So,
Yeah.
there are definitely marketing trends in what I do. And so it is important to not just follow them, but set them. And I think that's always kind of the goal, is to create something that's unique and unexpected.
Yeah, unique, unexpected, and to thread the needle, that your example also, I think it was a Chicago PD, Chicago Med trailer I saw on NBC, and
Yeah.
they had a cover of Tom Petty's I Won't Back Down. It was
Yeah.
stripped back, deconstructed. So in my mind, Lana, I'm always curious, correct, most of the time to have a cover, it's far more expedient in time, um, makes more sense to, if you have the concept, you're going to find someone, hey, can you do this and create it? Here's the timeline, versus calling through your catalog and finding a cover that might already exist. Is there any kind of, what's your insights there of the approach?
In terms of customizing covers,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Trailers are difficult because our timelines are so quick. Like I
Hmm.
have to pull music and have it ready sometimes within 30 minutes to an hour.
Wow.
So it is helpful to always have in my arsenal existing covers or existing tracks that would work for that specific project. in order to at least sell the idea initially.
Okay.
Then once the client is on board, or, once there's an actual conceptualized piece that you could see or hear, then we might have a little bit more time to delve into creating something.
Hmm.
But then, the timeline for creating something is often very short as well. My turnaround is 24 hours. Other times I have a few days, but if I'm lucky, 2 weeks is a good standard for that. I'm
Okay.
sorry, a week, not
A
2
week.
weeks.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's definitely something that I've done before. It just always helps to have like a jumping off point.
100%. 100%. Because yeah, I've seen some artists, and I'm curious on your take on this. Is artists on their own trailerizing, whether it's a cover or an original version of their song. And say we had an artist that had did some covers and they trailerized it. And if we send you the track and we also send you the stems, safe to say, if something is in the ballpark, at least if you guys have the stems, your editor, there could be a jumping off point there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And usually if an editor likes the song enough and is cutting with it, I'll always go back to that artist for the changes.
Hmm.
So, if you've got a woman singing Britney Spears Toxic in like a Thriller way, and we
Hmm.
needed to go back and add some strings or something like that, I'll always go back and say, "Hey, do you have any samples you could add in and work with that particular artist?"
Very cool. Very cool. It's fascinating because if we all had that crystal ball of, we can, as a sync agent and as an artist, we can reverse engineer and see what's being used now in a trailer. But it's like the stock market. Current performance does not dictate the future of what your needs are going to be.
No. No, and things change all the time. Like anybody who's listening who've heard me talk about this before, but I call it like the ladder of death. You got to get through me, and then you got to get through the editor, and then the producer, and then the creative director, and that's on my team alone. And at any
Hmm.
point that concept or that idea could die very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Um and usually when I do an initial pull, it's like no more than, let's say, 12 songs, because I don't want to inundate the editor and overwhelm them with all the ideas that I have. So
Yeah.
I usually like come prepared to go to bat for really special concepts.
Hmm.
And then, once you get past Rogue, then you got to get past the initial client at, Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers client has their boss and their boss and so forth. So at
Yeah.
any time, we're just constantly trying to climb until we either get to the top or we die.
Great analogy. Or one step back, two steps forward, and hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I've had instances where everybody loved the cut, everybody loved the song, and for whatever reason, maybe the singer made a incendiary statement and now we can't use it anymore,
Mm.
or maybe
Hmm.
something, happened in the world globally and it changed the lyric, and there's a whole bunch of reasons, and it's not because the song isn't good, it's
Yeah.
because of external factors.
Yeah. Great points and great tips, and thanks for that, because it's something. And also, social media, working with indie artists, like you said, if you post something up that can tarnish your brand identity, the studio is not going to want to align themselves with that artist, because that'll pull their brand identity down.
Yeah, and I do
Hmm.
think like if we segue just a little bit into like
Sure.
social media following, and
Yeah.
you know, uh, th- it's there's really two ways to go about it in trailers. One, you have an artist that is unrecognizable and the label's really wanting to push this artist and get them more followers, get them more streaming numbers and things like that. Put them in a trailer, put them in, music supervision in a scene or of some sort, and now people are shazamming them, and now they're starting to build a following. So, that's a mutually symbiotic beneficial relationship, right?
Hmm.
Then the other aspect of it is there are some clients who look for specific artists that have that following existing already.
Yeah.
So, what are your stream numbers? What are how many followers do you have? What's your persona like on social media? Does your TikTok have enough videos? Like they do look at those sorts of metrics.
Hmm.
Um so it's give and take in that realm in terms of how social media and how that person's persona or who they are as a brand, like you said, comes across.
Yes. Thanks for bringing that point up, because it's very timely. And at the time of, this podcast and TBD, if you want the talk around the water cooler, if you will, if TikTok gets banned, what's going to
Yeah.
happen? What do you think? People can pivot to Facebook or IG, but it's a sad time where artists are so reliant on breaking their music through social media. I'm curious what your take is.
Yeah. I'm actually a huge fan of TikTok.
Mhm.
I have used it in what I consider to be a very intentional way. Like, I really only follow content creators that I feel enrich my being or my life, like cooking, healthy cooking, fitness,
Mhm.
things like that. I really try and stay away from like things that make me feel inadequate or like, not enough for compare, like that I'm comparing myself.
Yeah.
So I approach social media very intentionally. That being said, I have found some really incredible artists on TikTok,
Mm.
and I love to follow a lot of those like accounts that really point out unique vocals and things like that. So my
Mm.
feed is consistently just music, and I think it's, there's just going to be another one that's most likely going to pop up,
Yeah.
or perhaps TikTok will sell to a different, ByteDance will sell to a different company. But I think that the thing that TikTok has brought out for me is that there's just so many beautiful people out there in the world and so
Mm.
many talented artists,
Mhm.
and there should be a platform to give them voices.
Yes.
So whether it's
Yeah.
TikTok or another app that's going to spring up, or we end up going to IG for the time being,
Mhm.
I think social media is such a great way to connect artists with the community in which they live in, or,
Mm.
globally, that now that it's been brought out, you can't
Mhm.
put it back in.
Couldn't agree more. It's sort of I came up in the 80s and 90s, infancy of when MySpace was around. And then MySpace
Yeah.
was just, look what that did to marketing music. And then you talk about, back in the, say, in New York, and the mixtapes with DJs, and the, passing out mixes on a analog medium. And now it's like you said, everyone's an entrepreneur as an indie artist.
Yeah. And I mean, I have been following, I'll give you an example. Natalie Jane. She's an artist that I believe just got signed to UME, I believe. And I've been watching her on TikTok since 2020 when it first started getting big. And so it was really cool to see that sort of progression from her just singing like at home,
Yeah.
and then to now I'm getting demos of her from the label,
Right.
to see if I could be used in a trailer. And I think that's so cool. There's so many fantastic artists, and I
Mhm.
love discovering them. And I would hate to lose that accessibility to them, I
Yeah.
guess I should say.
And you brought up a good point, because it's sort of in my mind of, I had a chat with Troy McCubbin from Alloy Tracks, and
Yeah.
we were talking about, and other music supervisors like yourself, and the advice for indie artists is sort of like, you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And just when you think you're going to quit, an opportunity might open. And with the influx of what you do between, you're creating, you're doing music, there's clearance side, you get bombarded, I'm sure, with so many emails. But if folks have the intention, they do their homework. And I'll say it, and I've talked about in other podcasts, is you and I, we're in the business of problem solving. So if I can
Yes.
show that, hey, I have music or cues that potentially, do your homework, know what you guys are working on, and you may not get a reply, but you never know. There may be one faithful day, hey, we have a cue that could work. And so, to thread the needle, advice for the AAPI community looking to break into the entertainment space as far as mentorship. Do you want to spend some time about
Of
mentoring? And
course.
yeah. Sure.
In terms of mentoring, I feel like I'm the big sister or like the mentor that I never had. I'm the big
Mm,
sister to people that I've never had as the youngest. I'm the mentor to people that, I didn't have growing up in the industry. So I'm always reaching back to sort of help pull people forward.
mm,
And the one piece of advice that I always give is that social skills are a completely underrated skill in our industry. It's not just about being able to listen to a song and see or think about it in a way that could be used. It's about, well, how do I convince that person that
mm,
that song is actually the one? Like, how do I go to bat for myself? Um, and I made my way through informational interviews. I would
mm.
hit up people and I would say, hey, like, I really want to learn about this. You have a lot of experience and I admire you. Can I take you out for coffee or can I bring coffee to your office and can we have a 30-minute chat? And you
Yeah.
can tell me and give me some tips, but like, let's have that face to face.
Mm,
And I feel like that skill is super underrated and the ability to sort of um, connect and relate to people in a
mhm.
way that's not just like, what can you do for me? Like, I
Yes.
see you're here, you know, let me try and get there by using you. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be about using another person. It should
Right.
be about wanting to learn from that person and continue connecting and building that relationship so that now you have that person going to bat to you for you.
Yeah.
So, definitely my biggest piece of advice is just try and talk to anybody that you can and come from it with an authentic, be your authentic self,
Mm.
and don't approach it from a way of like, well, what can you do for me?
Couldn't agree more. And that thirst for knowledge. I mean, my late father, he was a professor, and it's sort of like in the Zen parable as well. You and I share. I also do boxing for fitness, but martial arts. The discipline and the work we put in. It takes years, and it's sort of checking our ego at the door. We're
Absolutely.
always learning. And that thirst for knowledge is so important.
Absolutely. I think that's
Mhm.
the thing that keeps me as a supervisor relevant is like if I just rest on my laurels, oh, I've been a music director for 15 years now, that should be enough. Then
Mhm.
no, I'm gonna fall behind. Like, and we can touch base on this as well, but like AI, for example, if you
Yeah.
don't start working with AI, you are going to be left behind.
Mm.
So I make it a point to like just learn as much as I can,
Yeah.
um, that thirst for knowledge, like you were saying, I think is really important and something that will continually help you grow to eventually be the best that you can be. You should always be striving for that.
Hmm.
And going
Hmm.
back to discipline, I just had this conversation with a friend where it's like it you don't just have discipline. You're not like born with it. You have to
Yeah.
create it for yourself. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people just say like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm just not disciplined or I'm, so lax about it, and I'm a slacker. Like I slack off too, but
Yeah.
action comes before discipline. You have to
Mm.
continually make something, do the action consistently before it becomes a discipline, if that
Well,
makes sense.
well said. No, and I'm trying to think of a quote that is emblazoned at the gym from Muhammad Ali, and it's something to the effect of, you know, winning, in a boxing match, failure, it's when you decide that you're not going to get back up. That is what determines, whether you win. Do I have it in to do five more reps? And
Yeah.
it's that discipline, like you said, the regiment of, all right, I'm going to do 30 minutes of 5 rounds, but I'm going to finish. Not to spend a minute on AI because
Yeah.
it's relevant. There was a campaign. It was they did a playlist of just AI tracks. I think it was a
Uh,
restaurant, but I'm curious because we all know that AI is taking songs that already are out there. So I'm curious, do we have any data or what are your thoughts on the ramifications for, copyright if you're taking the genesis for something that already exists?
Yeah. That's a tough subject to speak to because I know I mean, I just feel like there's so much danger with AI.
Mhm.
And I'm going to talk about it visually first before I get into music. But like,
Yeah.
it really scares me that you could create a video of our president saying something that he never said
Mm.
and having that spread social media wide and having people believe it. Like that's very, very scary to me.
Mhm.
It's scary to me to hear about artists using AI, like I'm gonna I'm gonna bring up the Drake diss track, but
Yeah.
he had I'm not sure if he got Snoop's approval, but he had Snoop AI vocals in there, and so like that sort of aspect of it is quite scary. Um, so I do think there's going to be some sort of, I don't know, reckoning
Yeah.
coming up here with how AI is used, which is why I think there needs to be more legislation surrounding it.
Mm.
Um, more protection for the artist and the I don't think it's necessarily fair for a studio to own the likeness of somebody.
Mhm.
So, but this is a very like it's an area that I don't have enough exposure to,
Yeah.
and you're actually pointing out that I should definitely learn more about it. So, um, I have my fears about it, but at the same time, I also feel like if you don't get on top of it, and I said this before, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah.
So, that being said, I feel like I have to do my due diligence to learn what I can about it, and not just base everything off of opinion. But I know that there's
Mhm.
programs out there that'll allow you to break stems out and create acapellas where they didn't originally exist and create stems. And you know, at what point does it become stealing? You
Mm.
know,
Mhm.
but to your point earlier about like AI creating playlists, I feel like yes, that may be a more affordable sort of way of getting music, but you're missing the fundamental, uh, you know, aspect of it, which is the emotion, the
Yes.
story. The people who are singing and writing those songs have a story to tell,
Mhm.
and a computer doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So I think that the music industry will stay strong through this
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
in the end, people connect to other people. We don't
Yeah.
connect to computers. Well, that's what I'd like to see anyway.
I couldn't agree more. And it's like you said, it's a whole symposium that needs to be done, and time will tell. And so yeah, we will see what happens with AI and be optimistic about it. But one fun thing, Lana, I always like to end with is what's on repeat at the moment on your Spotify playlist.
You're totally gonna laugh at this, but I'm a Florida girl. I'm dating a Texas guy. Like we are Southern, and I love Jelly Roll. I
Jelly
think
roll.
he's just a phenomenal artist, super talented. And I was really sad to hear that like him and like Teddy Swims and these larger artists are kind of being bullied on social media for like, weight and things like that. But I'm just like you guys are just phenomenal. Your
Yeah.
voices are wonderful. Just please keep providing music. Like I'm just a huge fan. I think he's just so fun, writes the best music. He's a fun guy, and
Mhm.
I'd love to see more collabs from him.
Couldn't agree more.
This
Mhm.
my boyfriend and I we joke with each other. He Jelly Roll has a song with I think Lainey Wilson maybe called Wild Ones, and it's on repeat. I just love that song so much these days.
Yeah, there's so much, and I'm curious, what the rest of the, film schedule looks like, but one of those tracks in a trailer for the right film, because those artists are so huge and they will pull in, that their fan base for a film that fits.
Yeah, and I know that it's like categorized under country, but it's like they're mainstream, they're popish songs, and there are
Hmm.
definitely a lot of
Hmm.
crossover. You see a lot more country artists crossing over to like the top 100 or viral hits and things like that. So I do think that there is a place for it. Um, and
Yeah.
I've always loved country music, and
Hmm.
and for me, it's nostalgic, and
Mhm.
it's, I love storytelling, and I think country does a really great job of making putting storytelling in songs and making it more digestible and mainstream.
All we have to do is look at Beyonce, and I think Lana Del Rey is going to put out a future release that's with the country lane, if I'm not mistaken.
Country is taking over. I'm saying it now. It's too good to be kept behind
Yes,
doors.
I agree, and we'll post up. I'm just curious on the closing. Do you curate playlists on Spotify that folks can
Do
check out,
I?
or if you had, if you had a slither of spare time to do that?
Yeah, I definitely create playlists. I
Oh,
curate them. I don't put them publicly because,
okay.
I feel like oh, I have weird tastes and I'm scared to share them. So it's just going to be like a lot of like lo-fi and experimental, and then you're going to throw in some Lil Jon from the early 2000s. It's a mix of nostalgia. It's just all over the place.
I love it. No, we'll have to talk. I'm a marketing guy, label guy, so I'll be like, let's do a Spotify playlist from you for May.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But no, Lana, thank you so much. The time flies by. We covered so many topics and just a glimpse into what you do every day at Rogue Planet. And, hats off and kudos for all your success and continued work.
Thank
And,
you.
as an inspiration to AAPIs coming up in the entertainment industry. And thank you again for stopping by the studio.
Of course, thank you for having me. This was super fun.
Super fun. Can't wait for our next chat. With that, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to Synchronous, and we'll catch you on the other side. Namaste.
Go.